Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Eldritch Echoes. Holly Arnold always knew there was something different about the Isle of Wight. The old lighthouse, perched precariously on the cliffs overlooking the English Channel, had always held a magnetic allure for her and her friends. One stormy evening, driven by the boredom of a sleepy coastal town and a thirst for adventure, Holly, along with her friends Jack, Emily, and Tom, decided to explore the depths of the lighthouse, a place rumored to hold secrets long forgotten. The storm raged outside as the group made their way through the dilapidated interior of the lighthouse. The wind howled, and the rain lashed against the windows, but inside, an eerie calm prevailed. Holly led the way, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Holly turned to her friend, a mischievous grin on her face. "Come on, Emily, where's your sense of adventure?" Jack and Tom exchanged glances, both equally nervous but unwilling to back down now. They reached the bottom of the lighthouse, where Holly had discovered a trapdoor partially hidden under a pile of old ropes and fishing nets. "This is it," Holly whispered, her heart pounding with excitement. With some effort, they pried open the heavy door, revealing a narrow stone staircase leading into the depths of the earth. The air that wafted up from below was cold and damp, carrying a faint, unidentifiable odor. One by one, they descended into the unknown, their flashlights flickering as if the darkness itself sought to consume them. The staircase seemed endless, spiraling down and down until they finally emerged into a vast underground chamber. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly light. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone archway, its surface rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond. "What is this place?" Tom asked, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and the archway began to glow brighter. A low, resonant hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "We need to get out of here," Jack shouted, but it was too late. The archway flared with a blinding light, and the world around them dissolved into chaos. Holly felt herself being pulled through the archway, the sensation like being submerged in icy water. When the light finally faded, she found herself lying on the ground, her friends scattered around her. They were no longer in the underground chamber. The sky above them was a sickly green, and the landscape was twisted and alien. Jagged rock formations jutted out of the ground at impossible angles, and strange, bioluminescent plants glowed eerily in the dim light. "Where are we?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," Holly replied, helping her friend to her feet. "But we need to stick together and find a way back." As they began to explore the strange realm, they quickly realized that they were not alone. In the distance, dark shapes moved among the rocks, their forms indistinct but undeniably menacing. The air was filled with a constant, low drone, like the murmurs of 1,000 unseen voices. Hours turned into days as they wandered through the eldritch landscape, each passing moment bringing new horrors. They encountered bizarre creatures, some grotesquely malformed, others beautiful but deadly. Their provisions dwindled, and their hope began to wane. One night, as they huddled together for warmth, Holly heard a faint, familiar sound. She strained her ears, and there it was again, a distant echo of a voice, calling her name. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her heart pounding. "Hear what?" Tom replied, his eyes wide with fear. "Someone's calling my name," Holly said, getting to her feet. Against the protests of her friends, Holly followed the sound, weaving her way through the twisted landscape. The voice grew clearer with each step, guiding her towards a towering monolith at the center of a vast, desolate plain. As she approached, she saw that the monolith was covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen in the underground chamber. The voice was coming from within, a haunting, ethereal whisper that sent chills down her spine. "Holly, don't!" Emily called after her, but Holly was drawn to the monolith, unable to resist its pull. She reached out and touched the cold stone surface. Instantly, the symbols flared to life, and the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. A portal opened before her, swirling with dark energy. "We have to go through," Holly said, turning to her friends. "It's our only way out, with no other option." They stepped into the portal. The world around them twisted and contorted, and they found themselves back in the underground chamber beneath the lighthouse. The archway was dark and lifeless, the glowing symbols faded. They had made it back, but something was wrong. The chamber was different, older, and more decayed. They climbed the staircase and emerged into the lighthouse, only to find it in ruins, overgrown with vines and moss. The storm had passed, and the night was eerily silent. "What happened?" Jack asked, his voice trembling. "It feels like we've been gone for centuries," Emily whispered. As they made their way back to the town, they realized that it was abandoned, the buildings crumbling and overrun by nature. The few remaining inhabitants were strange and hostile, their eyes reflecting an unnatural light. In the days that followed, Holly and her friends tried to piece together what had happened. They discovered old records and journals that spoke of the lighthouse and the underground chamber, but there was no mention of the archway or the portal. One journal, however, contained a chilling warning: "Beware the Eldritch Echoes, for they are the whispers of forgotten gods, and their touch corrupts all it encounters." Holly couldn't shake the feeling that they had brought something back with them, something dark and malevolent. The whispers that had guided her in the other realm now haunted her dreams, growing louder and more insistent with each passing night. The Eldritch Echoes had followed them home, and their battle for survival was far from over. Holly woke up drenched in sweat, the whispered echoes of her name still ringing in her ears. She sat up in bed, breathing heavily, and glanced at the clock. It was 3:33 a.m., the same time she had woken up every night since their return. She looked out the window, the moon casting eerie shadows across the abandoned town. Her friends had been experiencing the same disturbances, their sleepless nights filled with nightmares of the Eldritch realm. Determined to find a solution, Holly gathered the group at the Old Town Library the next day. The building, though decrepit and forgotten, still held an extensive collection of local history and lore. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Holly said, flipping through a dusty tome. "If those symbols in the portal are tied to this place, there has to be something here that can help us." Emily, Jack, and Tom nodded, though their faces were etched with fatigue and fear. Hours turned into days as they pored over books, journals, and newspapers. The more they read, the more they realized how deeply the town's history was intertwined with the supernatural. One entry in an old journal caught Holly's eye. It was written by a former lighthouse keeper named Elias Thorne, dating back to the late 1800s. His detailed account described the discovery of the underground chamber and the archway, eerily similar to their own experience. Elias wrote of strange creatures and whispered voices, and a desperate attempt to seal the gateway. "It's here," Holly said, excitement tinged with dread. Elias tried to seal the gateway. Maybe he found a way. Following the clues in the journal, the group set out to find Elias's old residence, a cottage on the outskirts of the town. The cottage was in ruins, overgrown with ivy and barely standing. Inside, they found a hidden basement covered in dust and cobwebs. In the center of the room was a large, intricately carved stone altar. Elias mentioned a ritual, Holly said, reading from the journal. He used this altar to perform it, trying to bind the gateway. It didn't work, but maybe we can finish what he started. They spent the next few days gathering the required items for the ritual: ancient relics, rare herbs, and candles. Holly studied the incantations and symbols meticulously, her resolve strengthening with each passing day. The whispers in her dreams grew louder, more insistent, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. Finally, the night of the ritual arrived. The stormy weather seemed an ominous sign as lightning flashed and thunder roared. The group gathered in the basement, the air thick with tension. Holly began the incantation, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The candles flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. As she spoke the final words, the ground trembled, and the symbols on the altar began to glow. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the room. The air crackled with energy, and the portal began to form above the altar, swirling with dark, malevolent power. The whispers grew into a cacophony of voices, each one a fragment of the eldritch horrors they had encountered. "We need to hold on," Holly shouted, struggling to keep her composure. "Don't let go." The portal's pull was immense, dragging them towards its dark maw. Holly could see the twisted landscape of the other realm beyond, the grotesque creatures writhing in anticipation. Just as she feared they would be consumed, a brilliant light erupted from the altar, forcing the portal to shrink. The voices screamed in unison, a sound of pure agony, as the gateway began to close. "Keep chanting," Holly urged her friends, their voices joining hers in a desperate attempt to seal the portal. With one final burst of energy, the portal imploded, the dark energy dissipating into the air. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. They had done it, the gateway was sealed. Exhausted but relieved, Holly and her friends collapsed to the ground. The whispers in their minds faded, replaced by a profound silence. Days turned into weeks, and the town slowly began to feel normal again. The lingering presence of the Eldritch realm seemed to fade, and the townspeople, unaware of the true horror that had been averted, returned to their lives. Holly and her friends, however, would never forget. The experience had changed them, leaving invisible scars. They vowed to keep the secret of the lighthouse and the underground chamber, hoping that the nightmare would never resurface. But in the quiet moments, when the wind howled just right and the shadows danced in the corners of their vision, Holly sometimes wondered if the echoes of that Eldritch realm were truly gone, or if they were merely waiting, biding their time for another chance to breach the veil between worlds. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.